It all ended after Xia Tingwan's car accident. Su Yan and Xia Tingwan got divorced. Only then did Xia Tingwan realize how much he loved Su. Secretary Lu pushed that stack of cold prenup papers across the table. His tone was so flat you couldn't hear any. Just said it was Mr. Su. Told Xia Tingwan to read it inside. Tingwan's fingers trembled as he picked at his nail. His eyes locked almost desperately on the roses blooming outside the window. Of all times, he had to face Secretary Lu's all-business expression. He whipped his head up, slicing straight through his eye socket, impossible to hide under the light. It tore apart the face that once stunned everyone. His voice carried a hint of desperate hope, asking if Su Yan would show up. Secretary Lu politely adjusted his glass, said Mr. Su with words. Xia Tingwan gave a bitter smile. Didn't even bother looking anymore. Just flipped to the last page and scrawled his name. In the end, he still walked away with nothing. He stopped writing, eyes fixed on his left ring finger. On that clear jade ring. Back then, Su Yan had tenderly taken his, said his skin was so. Only this jade could bring out his elegance. Even promising that a person nurtures jade and jade nurtures the person. Su Yan had held him tight, whispered gently that he should wear this ring forever. Back then, Xia Tingwan wasn't attached to this marriage. Didn't care what he wore. Who knew forever would be so short? Just 5 years and it was over. Efficiently collected the paper. Before leaving, reminded him to take his time packing. Said Mr. Su would have a driver ready. Told him to watch what he said to the media. In the empty mansion, Xia Tingwan washed away all his exhaustion. Then spotted that postcard on the cabinet. It was the love note Su Yan wrote by hand when he was courting. The writing was neat. Called him a sweet juicy peach on the brag. But now those sweet words were long gone. That man would never write him poems again. He used to hate Su Yan's arrogant rich boy attitude. He did how he forced him to sign that contract, forced him to live together. But fate's cruel. One brutal car crash sent him tumbling from the top. Yesterday's superstar became a disfigured freak everyone avoided. 5 years of kindness repaid with cold abandonment. Xia Tingwan buried his head deep in his knees. A trapped animal's whimper escaped just from this suffocating feeling, he abandoned by the whole world. Broke him down even more than the pain from the crash. So he finally realized that when love dies, the scene is this ugly. It was the day the wild language crew held their press launch at the Peninsula Hotel. That day Xia Tingwan was unsteady on his feet from a hangover. His whole vibe was hazy and broken. His assistant glared at him in the rearview mirror. Scolded him for drinking so much before an event. Just told him to dodge the reporters later. Xia Tingwan pressed his throbbing temple and kept apologizing. Never expect. The second he got out of the car, he was swarmed by cameras. Little cotton padded jacket comics. And all kinds of tapes on his carriage. Xia Tingwan's brain went blank. Couldn't get a single word out. Then some nasty reporter dug up dirt on him hitting nightclubs. Asked if he was bringing his character's dysfunction into real life. Just when he was about to lose it, a broad hand landed firmly on his shoulder. Director, you just showed up. Just in time. Xia Tingwan to the cameras as the most talented actor he'd ever seen. That move set off all the flashes. Xia Tingwan shot him a grateful look. Listened to Shuja tell everyone about the audition stories. Called him the most stunning color in the deep sea. Xia Tingwan kept up his professional fake smile. Then found a gap and slipped into the bathroom. Splashed water on his face like trying to get some clarity. He desperately tried to remember those PR lines, but couldn't recall a single one. Right then, he suddenly spotted a man standing behind him in the mirror. The guy was around 30. Held a flashy gold cane in his right hand. Gave off this powerful, scrutinizing vibe. Was still staring. And held it out to him. Looking at himself like a drowned rat. Xia Tingwan awkwardly tried to decline. But the man spoke first. He pointed out. Even washing his face wouldn't hide the smell. Said wiping with this would help. Xia Tingwan took the handkerchief. A crisp, cool scent hit his nose instantly. That's when he understood what the man meant. He finished wiping and wanted to return. But felt weird about. Who knew the man had already naturally taken. The movement was elegant like an old school gentleman. The man turned and held the door open. Used his teeth to signal him to go. Xia Tingwan stepped forward, but felt this weird stubborn feeling. Suddenly stopped and asked who he was. The man smiled faintly. His eyes held some emotion you couldn't read. Said straight up he was just a fan. That man clearly promised to give him a home. Little cotton padded jacket comics. Not only kicked out of the mansion, didn't even have a place to go back to. Because the mother who pulled him out of hell years ago had already sold him off to that man like a bargaining chip. At the press event, Xia Tingwan got flustered again. And some weekly magazine reporter kept poking at sore spot. Not only praised his portrayal of the victim as spot on, but also asked about his personal life. Even asked if he personally experienced that kind of trauma. That question made Xia Tingwan's breath catch. Right then, under the spotlight, even just a few silence was enough to make you cringe. His palms kept sweating. As his eyes darted around, he actually spotted sitting in the front row. His hands were clasped. That focused, steady gaze made him feel a bit more settled. So he forced a smile, pulled out some perfect scripted answer. Said he had no such experience. It was all thanks to the director's guidance that he found the character so. Thought he'd gotten away with it, but kept wondering to himself, why was that fan sitting in the investors section? But when he looked again, the seat was already empty. Even though he was the main event, Xia Tingwan's mood tanked because of his earlier performance. Just wanted to disappear on the spot. He just found some empty corner to hide it. Who knew his agent still had sharp eyes and locked on? When Zhou Yang looked like that, it was never good news. Xia Tingwan sipped his champagne and raised an eyebrow, telling him to spit it out. Then Zhou Yang snatched the glass from his hand. Said helplessly someone wanted to take him to dinner. No, sir. Xia Tingwan turned it down flat without thinking. Didn't even want to know who it was. Said he didn't want to deal with those so-called rich guys. But this time Zhou Yang's expression changed. At the man talking with the director. Hinted that this Mr. Su's background was not someone to mess with. Oh, don't be that. Zhou Yang even said, if he really couldn't afford to never ask. After hearing this, Xie Tingwen just froze for a moment. Then anger shot straight to his head. He grabbed the glass back without and stormed straight towards Su Yan. Even though Shu Yan was in the middle of a good conversation, he shoved himself right between them. A mocking smile played on his lips, his eyes full of challenge. Why bother pretending to be a fan and messing with him? He snorted to himself. Thought these big shots all played the same game. Just wanted to play this power trip game. Pathetic. Su Yan looked down at this young man bristling with anger. A flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. Who knew Xia Tingwen would drop a bombshell? Just threw caution to the wind and said, might as well ask this Mr. Su what he's planning. The second the words left his mouth, was already cursing and inside. Thought his temper had totally fried his brain. Actually put this out there in public. Maybe even drag director Xu in. But since he'd said it, had to stick his neck out and see it. Still expect. Su Yan didn't get it. Instead, he bowed slightly and apologized. Now it was a Xia Tingwen's turn. This man who looked noble to the bone actually lowered his head. Then Su Yan calmly explained. He noticed his mood was off at the event. That's why he thought of inviting him. He turned around. He couldn't find it. So he asked Zhou Yang to pass the message. Must have been some kind of mix-up. Right then, Xia Tingwen just wanted to find a hole to crawl into. Could only mutter a quiet okay. Then Su Yan turned to the side, took something from that tower of a bodyguard behind him, elegant Brady, and handed it to him. Turns out Su Yan had specially tracked down this block, wanted to use this chance to get it signed. He really was a fan, no lie. In that moment, Xia Tingwen's face burned with shame. Didn't even dare look at the man's face. He grabbed the pen, scribbled his name on the disc, kept beating himself up aside for being sly. Luckily, Su Yan didn't hold a grudge. Gave him enough dignity. But right then, Su Yan's deep, magnetic voice sounded in his ear again. Little cotton-padded jacket. If anyone else ever made him this kind of crazy offer for dinner, no matter who they were, tell them to get lost. Xia Tingwen jerked his head up. Total disbelief. Not just because Su Yan's whole classy vibe totally clashed with that crude phrase, but because in this rushed confrontation, I felt the man's bossy, yet incredibly thoughtful protection. There was actually a subtle, warm smile. Told him if this caused any trouble, he could come to him anytime to fix it. But before Xia Tingwen could snap, the man just left a brief thank you, then turned and walked away without looking back. It had been 8 full days since Su Yan sang Secretary Lu. A full 8 days. Only now did Xia Tingwen finally accept that he really wasn't coming back. He couldn't keep holding on to false hope and dragging his. Had to start packing his scattered belongings. After all, Su Yan never left him alone in this empty house. For this long? Suddenly a thought hit him. Or maybe act cute and say he missed that man show up like before. Right in front of him in an instant. Thinking about it, Xia Tingwen slumped to the floor half kneeling. His body shaking out. He really missed Su Yan. Even wanted to scream and demand why he was so heartless to abandon me. Actually, there wasn't much to pack. He organized the big stuff he couldn't take and left it with the butler. So he just grabbed one small suitcase, put on sunglasses to hide his red eyes, and walked out of the Su family. Then the driver quietly asked where to go. Tingwen stared blankly at the fragrant hill scenery flying past the window. A bitter feeling rose inside. Go back to that place where he was just a punching bag. That's so. Called thinking back to when he was left him with that alcoholic who just abused his son, that jerk Zhong. Zhang Xuqiao showed up again with her businessman stepdad and pulled him out of hell just like that. Back then he was young and trembling, holding out his scared arms, saying it hurt. But Zhang Xuqiao just wrinkled her nose in disgust. Told him coldly to remember to smile like his stepdad after he put on the medal. Then a few years later the stepdad's business. Zhang Xuqiao changed her tune. Said all serious that he owed her for saving him. Had to go spend his life with Mistress. Said Mr. Xu truly teared Troy. Go back to that place where she saw him as a bargaining chip. Trading away his life, however, couldn't help thinking back to Su Yan's promise 5 years ago. His eyes had burned as he told him. Even though he couldn't change, he'd give him a real home from now on. But right then, his phone screen suddenly lit up, showing a call from his birth mother Zhang Xuqiao. Xia Tingwen stared at the screen and laughed. She probably didn't care if he lived or died. Just wanted to push him to beg Su Yan for forgiveness. When the driver asked again, Xia Tingwen hung his head crushed, his voice barely audible. He didn't have a home menu. Finally just told the driver to head to his assistant's place. Then he tossed his phone aside. The screen showed their intimate photo together. The screensaver felt especially mocking. To get over his heartbreak, the big star crashed at his assistant's place. For 2 weeks, the assistant couldn't take it anymore. Jiao Nanshu pushed through the door carrying a heavy takeout bag in his left hand. He raised his voice at the wiggling mound of blankets on the bed, grinning as he showed off his pride. But Xia Tingwen just shrank back, didn't even lift an eyelid. Mumbled a muffled good morning through the blanket. Jiao Nanshu pursed his lips helplessly, griped about what time it was to still be saying good morning. Then he yanked back the corner of the blanket, looking at the worn out man. Couldn't help sign that boss, you've been rotting here for almost 2 weeks. You're probably gonna grow toxic mushrooms on yourself. Xia Tingwen just lazily grunted, his eyes empty like an unfocused lead. Xiao Nanshu just sat down on the bed, waved the bag in his hand, suggested they kick off a crawfish party mode tonight. Throw all those lousy men to the back of their minds. So the 2 of them sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, quickly unwrapped the packages. 13 spicy, bright red crawfish instantly filled the small table. Xiao Nanshu counted off the flavor, while casually passing over a cold can of beer. He said offhandedly, yeah, bought too much, but today's all about letting loose. The moment Xia Tingwen's fingers touched the cold can, his fingers curled up sharp. He hesitated and pushed the drink aside, muttered quietly that since that drunk driving incident, he hasn't touched a drop in 6. Nanshu raised an eyebrow, probed if it was because of that Mr. Su. Xia Tingwen pressed his lips together, admitted glumly that though he didn't blame him, he knew Su Yan was actually really angry. He wanted to turn over a new, but Su Yan wasn't even planning to give him that chance to make things right. Guess this is what they call getting what you deserve. Shu let out a heavy sigh, like some elder who's seen it all. Stated firmly that heartbroken people can't move on without drowning their sorrows. Xia Tingwen opened his mouth, quietly argued that this was a breakup, not heartbreak. The desolation welling up from his heart felt even heavy. He thought again he'd already gotten divorced, and here he was still holding on to that man's rules. Ridiculous. So he popped open the tap, tilted his head back and chugged half the can. The burn of alcohol made him think Jiao Nanshu's words were gospel truth. He had to pull himself together. They clinked their cans together, like a send-off to this failed romance. Then they sprawled shamelessly on the wooden floor, laughing like crazy. Jiao Nanshu told on-set gossip in vivid detail. Said that young actor's face went green when Xia Tingwen walked away. Xia Tingwen propped himself up, asking where he heard all this. But staring at the Pure Shi in front of him, he suddenly sank into dead silence. He lowered it, asked quietly if Nanshu remembered Feng County back then, before the other clans. Those memories came flooding out on their own. Shot for a month in that remote little county, tortured daily by farmhouse. So he casually posted on social media that he wanted Shi. Who knew that in just 3 days, Su Yan actually showed up at the set with his personal chef. That shock and joy that fell from the sky, thinking about it now still made his heart race. And Su Yan just smiled so gently and said it was his honor. That night, the whole crew benefited. But only she got the sweet treatment of Su patiently peeling shells. At this moment he finally realized, the happiness back then wasn't about those shrimp alone. It was because that man was by his side. Without Su Yan, he couldn't even walk straight in this world. If Su Yan saw him now looking like such a mess, how disappointed would he be? Jiao Nanshu quickly moved close, gently patted his back to comfort him. Xia Tingwen buried his face in his knee, voice thick with tears, almost breaking down, murmuring he missed him so much, really missed him. Jiao Nanshu's heart was breaking. Anxiously ran his hand, watching Xia Tingwen cry and shake, finally bit the bullet and suggested, if you can't let go, just go for broke and try again. Xia Tingwen lifted his red sword, asked blankly how the Jiao Nanshu just went all in. Said straight out, you two have 5 years of history. Someone like Su Yan wouldn't have stuck around this long without real feelings. Not even showing his face at the breakup, maybe he was scared of going soft. A flicker of faint light flashed in Xia Tingwen's eyes. So Jiao Nanshu saw it and added, worst case you lose face again. You've seen each other at your worst anyway. No shame in bending for someone you love. After her boyfriend of 5 years broke up over the phone, he even pathetically texted thanking him for 5 years of care. Thought this farce was over. Never expected a month. He decided to work up the courage to see his ex one last time. But when he arrived at their former love nest, full of hope as he pressed the doorbell, the one who opened the door wasn't the person he decided to listen to Jiao Nanshu and try one last. He'd been a wreck for almost a month. After making up his mind, he finally pulled himself together. Got his hair cut sharp. But when he sat in front of the mirror, his eyes couldn't help staring hard at the scar on his right cheek. Jiao Nanshu stood behind him holding concealer. Hand froze immediately, asked if he wanted to cover. Xia Tingwen slowly shook his head. Actually, after all the scars on his body, Su Yan had seen more than just this. He never thought they were ugly before either. Jiao Nanshu suddenly leaned in curious, asked how Su Yan brought up the breakup with him. Tingwen lowered his eyes, said those few words over the phone. He let out a loud, face full of disbelief, questioning something this big and you agreed without talking face. Xia Tingwen could only give a bit of smile. He didn't know what came over him then. Just stubbornly agreed like that. I figured since it was already decided, talking more wouldn't change anything. The day after hanging out, Xia Tingwen was completely out of it. He even sent Su Yan a message, thanking him for 5 years of care. Thinking back now, he felt like such a clown. Clearly couldn't let go inside, but had to send a goodbye text pretending to be gracious. So incredibly, Jiao Nanshu patted his shoulder in comfort, told him to stop thinking about the past. Since you decided to talk again, he dragged Xia Tingwen over. But Xia Tingwen's anxiety was growing like crazy. Asked nervously if Su Yan would refuse to see him. Jiao Nanshu didn't answer directly. Just said you'll know when you get there. Late night Fragrant Hills was heart-stoppingly beautiful. The car slowly spiraled up the mountain road. You could see across the bay to the bustling downtown of H City. Jiao Nanshu steadily parked the car on the front drive. As Xia Tingwen walked out alone. In front of the porch grew a huge patch of red roses. The year they married, Su Yan planted them with his own hands. He stood among those lush, graceful flowers. Took a deep breath of cool air. The flowers were blooming so beautiful. He still carefully thinking this, he felt a bit delusional. Could they be as close and open as before? Xia Tingwen stepped to the door, finally mustered all his courage and pressed the doorbell. The wait was obviously short, but he felt every second stretched infinitely. I couldn't help imagining Su Yan opening the door. The opening lines he rehearsed with Jiao Nanshu in the car 1,000 times. Now completely forgot. He missed him so much, even wanted to throw himself into his arms the moment. Tell him how much he'd suffered all this time. In this eager fantasy. Xia Tingwen's head was burning up. Felt like the divorce stuff didn't even exist. Su Yan was still so just then, that heavy door opened. But Xia Tingwen's smile froze on his face before it could bloom. It wasn't Su Yan who opened the door. Before him stood a guy in his early 20s, wearing a white lab coat, refined elegant feature. He clearly paused seeing Xia Tingwen. Tentatively called him Mr. Xia Tingwen had no idea who he was, but he seemed very familiar. He pushed down his unease and asked who he was. After the initial surprise, the young man showed a polite, told Xia Tingwen to wait. Then he turned and walked 2 steps inside, looked up toward the 2nd floor and called out, "Yeah, Mr. Xie." After calling out, he turned and gestured for Xia Tingwen to come in. He actually called Su Yan, and he stood in the middle of this house. That natural, easy manner looked exactly like the man of the house welcoming. Xia Tingwen's heartbeat went haywire, wildly guessing who he could be. Just then Su Yan appeared at the top of the stairs in black pajamas. What's wrong? Xia Tingwen looked up at him. This man he'd shared a bed with for 5 years. In this moment felt so foreign he didn't know how to speak. The young man spoke first, said Mr. Shaxia. So Yan came down the stairs, gently placed a hand on the young man's waist, drew him halfway into his arms. Said warmly he wanted to talk to Xia Tingwan alone. The young man looked at Su Yan with gentle, shining eyes, obediently nodded, said he'd go upstairs with Ning Ning. Then Su Yan gestured for Xia Tingwan to come in. Let him in. A month ago this was still his home, but now Xia Tingwan stood here, like some unwelcome intruder. This was too ridiculous. He'd actually thought Su Yan couldn't let go, thought he had a chance to try again. In this moment he finally woke up. Coming back to Fragrant Hills was probably the worst decision of his life. He'd been pampered like a little prince for 5 years, then ruthlessly dumped. Even when he humbly showed up to ask why, the answer wasn't that he'd moved on. It was all the ways he caused trouble over 5 years. Getting tangled up with a man when drunk driving and racing when throwing tantrum. But when he finally lowered his proud head to beg forgiveness, the other said it's best they never see each other again. Su Yan set the steaming coffee down on the table, then sat down across. His gaze held a polite distance, asked if there was something he needed. Xia Tingwan looked pale. The hair he'd carefully styled, the clothes he'd picked out, along with all those pep talks he'd given himself. In this moment all seemed like some pathetic clown show. Xia Tingwan instantly lost all his fight. So he murmured quiet, voice like said he seemed to have some packed things he hadn't received. But Su Yan just nodded slightly, said he'd have the housekeeper check. If anything was missed they'd send it over tomorrow. Xia Tingwan's hastily made up excuse was easily seen through. Then Su Yan leaned forward slightly, didn't get up though, but subtly signaling it was time to leave. His gaze asked again if there was anything else. Xia Tingwan instinctively shook that there wasn't anything else. But the moment he looked up into Su Yan's light gray eyes, his nose suddenly stung. The emotions piled up inside broke through right then. He stubbornly stared at him, demanding why they broke up. Was it because he felt so? That he tried to awaken his memory, brought up all those passionate words out of that promise that he'd always be his little prince. But bringing this up after the love was gone had only made him feel completely humiliated. It felt like being publicly executed. He knew these demands were too selfish, but he couldn't accept that love had an expiration date. He could only be a little prince for 5 years. Why not tell him the truth from the start? Just that. Su Yan truly looked at Xia Tingwan for the first time today. His previously calm face instantly tightened, showing some authority and cold. He recounted the past. Pointed out 5 years ago at their wedding Xia Tingwan was the one who was Rula. Getting drunk and tangled up with other men and photographed was also Xia Tingwan. 6 months ago throwing a tantrum and going drunk driving and racing was him too. Since Xia Tingwan was extremely insecure and cared too much about things, every time he messed up someone had to give him an out before he'd soften. Su Yan admitted he gave him everything these years because of love. But Xia Tingwan never truly cared about this relationship. He said plainly he was. Hearing these words, Xia Tingwan's body started trembling involuntarily. Though he'd asked for this answer himself, every word Su Yan spoke felt like a blade, made him want to cover his ears and run. His eyes were brimming with tears. He could only use all his strength to hold on, to keep from completely breaking down crying in front of Su Yan. Turns out his recklessness all these years caused Su Yan so much pain. He'd always hidden in his warmth, used that favoritism to run wild. He finally lowered his head, voice hoarse, admitting he was wrong. Quietly begged him to forgive. Su Yan was clearly taken. Didn't expect the always proud Xia Tingwan to back down so easy. Then, Su Yan became even colder. Said he didn't want to spare anyone's feelings anymore. Since you want it straight, let's lay it all out. This relationship ending has nothing to do with anyone. He was just tired. Han admitted he had no love or hate for him now. No debt or attachment even better. We never see each other again. He walked away from the Su family estate. On the way back, he suddenly remembered Su Yan's old habit. Whenever he traveled, Shou Yan would send him a postcard. Xia Tingwan used to tease him about being old-fashioned, but Su Yan never got mad. He just gently explained he wanted to share the world with him. A little slower was once upon a what the postcards Xu Yan sent from overseas said. Xia Tingwan alone was worth more than everything in the world, because he was Su Yan's little prince to protect forever. But things changed. He destroyed his only chance at being truly loved. The memories Su Yan left now felt like the fading scent of roses, bringing a heartbreaking bitterness, yet still hiding a trace of lingering sweetness. Zhao Nanshu, who was driving, saw him looking so lost, like he'd lost his soul. He didn't dare say a word. He just stepped on the gas. When they came down from Fragrant, Xia Tingwan finally snapped out of it. His voice hollow. So he doesn't love me anymore. We're really over this time. He was treated so gently by that man. His ugliest scars were promised they'd never be hurt again. But when he woke from jail, he was hit with news his ex had someone new. And that someone was. He cried his heart out in Su Yan's arms, begging him not to hit him, hoping for a promise to never be hurt. Su Yan agreed so gently. But then Xia Tingwan jolted awake. Really was all just a memory. He buried his head in his knees, a muffled sob escaping his throat. He couldn't stop calling out for him. Then he leaned against the headboard, checking his phone. He struggled with deleting Su Yan's contact. His finger hovered over the delete button, but he just couldn't press it. Their empty chats stopped 2 months ago. Just then his phone buzzed. He flinched. What he saw was a photo of elite businessman Su Yan with a young man. The caption said CEO Su might have someone new. Xia Tingwan stared at the screen. He recognized the guy from the Su estate yesterday, before he could process it. Nanshu bursting. Xia Tingwan looked up, his eyes empty, his voice hoarse. Is this the truth? Zhao Nanshu sat on the bed, tried to calm him down. He said the media always makes things up. Everyone knows what kind of man Mr. Su. Don't take it to heart. But Xia Tingwan just smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said he saw that guy at Fragrant Hills yesterday. Zhao Nanshu pulled up the full story on his phone. The guy's name is Wenzi. Friend said he's a pediatric nurse at Renha Hospital. Xia Tingwan froze. His mind raced. He suddenly remembered his car accident. He was treated at that hospital. A chill ran through him. Were they already involved back then? Zhao Nanshu watched his face carefully, suggesting they look into Wen Ziken. To avoid any misunderstanding, he quickly explained they just wanted to know who he was, not to cause trouble. Xia Tingwan's mind was a mess. He remembered Wen Ziken mentioning going upstairs to see Mingni. And he's a pediatric nurse. Who's Mingni? He couldn't sit still anymore. He walked to the balcony for a smoke, watching the traffic below. He lit up with trembling hands, letting the smoke fill his lungs. Zhao Nanshu followed him out, reaching for a lighter. Xia Tingwan knew he was quitting, but Zhao Nanshu lit up anyway, saying he just wanted to keep his boss company. Zhao Nanshu blew out the smoke ring, asking if he ever wanted to start over, go back to some point in the past. Xia Tingwan stared at the glowing ember, admitting he thinks about it constantly. Those words were heartbreaking. When Xia Tingwan asked when he'd go back to, Zhao Nanshu mentioned the high school, that ridiculously hot basketball captain. He even missed those secret moments in the locker room. Then he changed the subject, asking if Mr. Shu was Xia Tingwan's first love. Xia Tingwan thought about it. Before Su Yan made, he had a crush on celebrity Xing Lai. Zhao Nanshu's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but gasp. Xia Tingwan smiled helplessly. It was just a drunken kiss. Not real love. Maybe he just thought the guy was hot. After that, it was only Xu Yan. Zhao Nanshu made a face, joking that his love life was pretty bare bones. 人员编字不灭可以说，教劳探被聚众下令的排舞课子。说仍但就荒缅点不星爷参北孤粉，光门受自种后，追捕到临脸的三昧波，也只有说。Xia Tingwan's ears turned red. Zhao Nanshu got the hint and dropped it. He didn't push further. He just stood beside her, patted his shoulder, saying softly that everything passes. Xia Tingwan nodded quiet. The list star falls from grace over a scandal. Even the breakup got mocked online as karma. He thought it was just a career crisis. But his manager's slip of the tongue was chilling. A few nights later, Xia Tingwan got a call from his manager Zhou Yan. He'd been avoiding Zhou Yan, ignoring calls and texts. But he couldn't keep doing that. Zhou Yang sounded calm, but cold and businesslike. He politely asked how he was doing. Xia Tingwan muttered he was okay. Zhou Yang's tone turned sharp. He demanded to know why he missed this week's scar treatment. Xia Tingwan, curled up on the couch, finally admitted he'd been feeling awful. Couldn't bring himself. Hearing that excuse, Zhou Yang's pent-up anger exploded. He tore into Xia Tingwan for being careless, not only ruining his career, but throwing away his livelihood. Zhou Yang rarely talked like this. Xia Tingwan gripped his phone, sitting on pins and knees. He could only take it. Zhou Yang dredged up old issues, from the DUI to the breakup, saying the media made him a joke. Xiao Mianfu Comics. Xiao Yaobing Yanshou Mianao Comics. Faced with all this, Xia Tingwan's throat felt stuffed with cotton. He really didn't think. She said to the nurse, saying his biggest problem was never thinking. Mianshu Fuma Ren Mei Anfu Comics. Xiao Mianao Comics. He just hides when he screws up, never faces the consequence. Xia Tingwan's eyes went wide. His breathing quickened. Zhou Yang's voice echoed through the phone, listing the drinking and the reckless driving, even mentioning the person he hurt. The company handled PR and apology. His manager worried about his face, but he just vanished because he felt bad. Every word cut deep. Zhou Yang hung up in frustration. Xia Tingwan stood there stuck. He ran his hands through his hair, full of regret. He really was a mess. But something felt off. Zhou Yang just mentioned hurting someone. He called back immediately, urgently asking about the details. Silence on the other end. Xia Tingwan checked the call was still connected. He spoke again. After several seconds, Zhou Yang finally claiming bad signal. He explained it meant hurting himself. He told him to be at the hospital tomorrow. Xia Tingwan hung, looking troubled. Something didn't add up. The next morning, Zhou Nanshu showed up with ready to take him to the hospital. He tossed it to Xia Tingwan, asking if the procedure hurt. Xia Tingwan said it was fine. Zhou Nanshu leaned in, saying mysteriously, he had a lead on Wenzi. Xia Tingwan perked up. He gestured for him to spill. Zhou Nanshu played coy, demanding a fancy meal first. Xia Tingwan rolled his eyes, telling him to stop stall. Zhou Nanshu backed down. He shrugged, saying the guy's pretty ordinary. Wen Ziken's a nursing school grad, works in pediatrics, has a sick younger brother, but he's been acting strange lately. He's caring for an important patient, only working 2 days a week. Xia Tingwan's heart raced. He asked who the patient was. Zhou scratched his head. A car accident victim. Xia Tingwan's mind flashed to that gentle young man, saying he had to see Mingni. He grabbed Zhou Nanshu's arm, demanding to know when the accident happened. Zhou Nanshu didn't realize how serious this was. He scrolled through his phone. Zhou Nanshu's voice suddenly stopped. His face went pale. It was the same night Xia Tingwan had his accident. Before he could finish, Xia Tingwan broke down, covering his face and sobbing. So that night he'd been using his own trauma as an excuse. He hurt the man who loved him, destroyed something precious, and ruined an innocent person's life. His ex cleaned up the whole mess. Only then did he realize he was the real villain. Zhao Nanshu's grip on the wheel tightened. He sounded disbelieving. Boss just lost his license for 6 months. The media has been quiet. No victim's family showed up. How could you have hit someone? There's gotta be a mistake. Xia Qingwan looked. His lashes hiding the panic in his eyes. His voice was hoarse. He admitted he blacked out. That night he was wasted. All he remembered was the hood about to hit a bumper. He couldn't stop. He suddenly looked up at Zhao Nanshu, ordering him to go to fragment halls to find some. He needed answers face to face. Su Yan and Zhou Yang conspired to hide this. Wasn't over. Zhao Nanshu opened his mouth, but said nothing. He just stepped on the gas. The car shot toward Fragrant Hills like an arrow. The moment Zhao Nanshu parked at the Su estate, 并失效于 P.O. Comics. Xiaomi and all comics. Su Yan looked up and met his gaze. 平来电系的 man's face dark. Then, for a little boy, held 1 seconds 喊。典型的平民医学，你还要火弯外大，实行欧米极好一路伟大哦，靠门词密，重真你牙那要靠卖四卷。Xiao奥米yang Kyo comics. He coldly asked why he was here. Xiao Tingwen moved, demanding to know how long he'd hide the truth about the accident. Wen Zikin stepped forward, about to say something, but Su Yan waved him off impatiently, telling him to take Ning Ning inside. Wen Zikin didn't dare argue. He picked up the boy and retreated into the house. Once everyone was gone, Su Yan asked quietly what he wanted to know. Xia Tingwen's lips trembled. The question stuck in his throat. Finally, he asked in fear, if he really hit someone. Su Yan didn't hesitate. He gave a blunt yes. Xia Tingwen stumbled backward, looking shocked. He muttered incoherently, saying he only hit a bump. Su Yan seemed determined to rip off the bandage. He answered bluntly. The question mark. Couldn't even see the bumper clear, let alone the road. After hitting the bumper, the car spun out to the right. Just then, Yingling and his mom jaywalked. The back of the car clipped them hard. By then Xia Tingwen was completely out of it. Xia Tingwen felt all his strength drain away. He stared blankly, murmuring to himself. He really hit someone. But why did everyone hide it? No media, no police investigation. For 6 months he had no clue like an idiot.